The massive crystalline chambers of the Galactic Council echoed with a silence that had never existed in its 3,000-year history. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the human delegation podium, her hands steady despite the weight of what she was about to announce. Around her, representatives from 47 different species watched with expressions ranging from confusion to outright hostility. The Zephyrian ambassador, his blue-scaled face twisted in what humans had learned to recognize as contempt, spoke first. Surely the human delegation jests. No species has ever withdrawn from the council voluntarily. Sarah's voice carried across the vast chamber without amplification, a trait that had always unsettled the other species. The Terran Federation formally withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. We reject the continued subjugation disguised as protection, and we refuse to accept the role of junior partner in our own galaxy. The eruption was immediate. 47 different species began speaking, shouting, or producing whatever sounds constituted outrage in their cultures. The chamber filled with a cacophony that would have been beautiful if it weren't born from anger and disbelief. High Chancellor Vexhai, the ancient leader whose species had founded the council millennia ago, raised one of his forearms. The chamber fell silent. His voice, when it came, carried the weight of eons. The humans forget their place. When we found your species, you were barely capable of leaving your own star system. We granted you membership despite your primitive nature. We protected you from the Void Hunters, from the Machine Collective, from threats your young minds cannot even comprehend. Sarah had expected this. Every human diplomat had been trained for this moment since Earth's first contact 50 years ago. Protection? Protection? She repeated, her voice carrying an edge that made several nearby ambassadors shift uncomfortably. You mean the protection that comes with surrendering our mineral rights to Altarian mining corporations? The protection that requires us to limit our population growth to levels you deem appropriate? The protection that forbids us from developing weapons technology beyond what you consider safe? The Altarian representative, an insect-like being whose species controlled most of the galaxy's mining operations, clicked his mandibles aggressively. Humans reproduce at dangerous rates. Without population controls, your species would overwhelm entire sectors within centuries. And yet, Sarah continued, when the hegemony attacked the Outer Rim colonies last year, where was this protective council? When human settlements on Kepler 442 sent distress calls for 3 weeks before they were overrun, who responded? Not the council fleet, human ships, human soldiers, human blood. The hegemony incident had been a turning point for many humans. An aggressive species had launched raids against several colonies in disputed territory. The council had declared it an internal matter, not worth their intervention. But humans had died, and Earth had watched it happen while bound by council laws that prevented them from responding with their full military capability. Chancellor Vexhai's expression darkened. The humans were instructed to follow proper procedures, to file formal complaints through appropriate channels. Your species' tendency toward immediate violence is precisely why such restrictions exist. Violence? Sarah's laugh was cold. We call it self-defense. We call it protecting our own when no one else will. Juan, the Qualith ambassador, whose species prided itself on mental abilities far beyond human comprehension, projected his thoughts directly into the minds of everyone present. The humans' neural patterns show remarkable instability. Their emotional volatility makes them unsuitable for advanced responsibilities. Perhaps it is for the best that they remove themselves. Sarah felt the familiar pressure of telepathic intrusion and did something that shocked every telepath in the chamber. She pushed back. Hard. The Qualith ambassador jerked as if struck, his large eyes widening in surprise and pain. Get out of my head, she said quietly. And stay out. The chamber erupted again, but this time with a different energy. Fear. No human had ever successfully resisted Qualith telepathy, much less caused physical discomfort to the projector. How? The Qualith ambassador whispered aloud, abandoning his usual telepathic communication. Sarah smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We've had 50 years to study you. All of you. Did you really think we were sitting quietly in our little corner of space, Grateful for your scraps and protection? Humans don't work that way. The implications hung in the air like a toxin. 50 years of observation. 50 years of learning. 50 years of preparation. High Chancellor Vexhai stood slowly, his ancient frame moving with deliberate precision. If the humans choose to abandon the protection and wisdom of the Council, they do so at their own peril. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. Your species is young and inexperienced. Without our guidance, you will not survive a decade. Maybe, Sarah acknowledged, but we'll survive it as humans, on our own terms, making our own choices. Good or bad, they'll be ours. She reached into her diplomatic pouch and withdrew a small device that looked deceptively simple. Every species in the chamber recognized it immediately. A quantum communication beacon, capable of instantaneous contact across galactic distances. Earth sends its regards, she said, and activated the beacon. The response was immediate. Every screen in the chamber lit up with the same image: a human fleet in high orbit around Earth. Not the small collection of ships the Council had permitted humanity to maintain, but hundreds of vessels, their designs unlike anything in the Council databases. Sleek, predatory shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Impressive display, Chancellor Vexhai said, though his voice carried less certainty than before. But ships are useless without experience. Without proven technology. The Council has fought wars for millennia. Humans have barely managed to keep peace in their own system. Sarah's smile grew wider. You're absolutely right, Chancellor. We are inexperienced. Which is why we're leaving to get some experience. The galaxy is a big place, full of opportunities to learn. She began walking toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. At the massive doors, she turned back one final time. The Terran Federation thanks the Galactic Council for 50 years of education. We've learned so much about how the galaxy really works, about power, and who has it, and who decides how it gets used. Consider our withdrawal a graduation of sorts. The doors sealed behind her with a finality that resonated through the chamber. For long moments, no one spoke. Then the Zephyrian ambassador broke the silence. Should we be concerned about this development? High Chancellor Vexhai settled back into his seat, his four eyes focused on the now empty human podium. Concerned? No. Humans are impulsive and emotional. They will attempt to establish their own territory somewhere in the Outer Rim, clash with established powers, and be back within 5 years begging for readmission. But even as he spoke, something nagged at the ancient leader's mind. The way the human had resisted telepathy. The casual confidence she had displayed. The mysterious fleet that appeared from nowhere. 50 years of observation, she had said. 50 years of learning. What exactly had the humans been learning? The question would haunt the council chambers long after the human delegation's ships had vanished into hyperspace, heading away from the civilized galaxy toward the unknown regions where only the desperate and the foolish dared to venture. Behind them, they left only silence and the growing realization that perhaps, just perhaps, the Council had underestimated the young species they had so casually dismissed. Captain Marcus Torres stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Defiant Spirit, watching stars that no human had ever catalogued stream past through the viewport. It had been 18 months since Earth's dramatic exit from the Galactic Council, and the fleet of colony ships, research vessels, and military escorts had traveled farther from home than any human expedition in history. "Sensor sweep complete, Captain," reported Lieutenant Kim Nakamura from her station. "No Council presence detected within 50 light-years. We're officially in unmapped territory," Marcus nodded grimly. The plan had been ambitious from the start. Take humanity's hidden fleet and establish colonies beyond the reach of the Council's influence. What they hadn't expected was how much they would discover about themselves in the process. The first revelation had come within weeks of leaving Council space. The alien technologies that humanity had been forbidden to research suddenly became available for study: captured Void Hunter devices, salvaged machine collective components, and most importantly, the ruins of a dozen dead civilizations that the Council had declared off-limits. Dr. Elena Vasquez emerged from the main laboratory, her excitement barely contained. "Marcus, you need to see this. The quantum resonance chamber we found on Delta 7 isn't just a weapon. It's a manufacturing system." She led him through corridors filled with the ordered chaos of research in progress. Teams of scientists worked alongside military engineers, combining human ingenuity with alien technology in ways the Council had never imagined. Or perhaps they had imagined it, and that was why they had forbidden it. "Look at this," Elena said, gesturing to a device that hummed with barely contained energy. The Vorthak civilization, extinct for 10,000 years according to Council records, developed this before they disappeared. It doesn't just create materials, it creates materials with properties that shouldn't exist according to known physics. Marcus studied the readings on her display. And it responds to human operators? Better than that, it responds to human creativity. The Council species follow established patterns, proven methodologies. But humans? We improvise. We imagine things that don't exist, and then figure out how to make them real. This technology rewards that kind of thinking. Across the fleet, similar discoveries were being made. The machine collective's adaptive algorithms, when properly decoded, revealed programming languages that operated on principles of intuitive leaps rather than pure logic. Void Hunter bioships contained genetic sequences that could be modified using human understanding of evolutionary pressure in ways that their original creators had never considered. But the biggest discovery came 6 months later, when the fleet encountered something that changed everything. Other refugees. The Cathari had fled Council space 3 centuries earlier, refusing to accept the limitation of their species to a single star system. They had built a hidden civilization in a cluster of rogue planets, maintaining technology that rivaled anything in Council space while remaining completely undetected. Their leader, a being whose name translated roughly as Stormwind, greeted the human fleet with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. "So," Stormwind said during the first diplomatic meeting, "another species grows tired of the Council's generous protection." The sarcasm in his translated words was unmistakable. Admiral Rachel Price, commander of the human fleet, had learned to appreciate directness during their months in unknown space. "We got tired of being told what we couldn't do, what we couldn't learn, what we couldn't become." Stormwind's beak-like mouth curved in what humans learned was amusement. "And what do you hope to become, out here in the dark between stars?" "Whatever we're capable of," Rachel replied, "without anyone else deciding for us." The Cathari had faced the same choice centuries ago. They had chosen freedom over safety, growth over stability. Their technology reflected this philosophy, devices that pushed boundaries, that explored possibilities rather than confirming established knowledge. The Council teaches that advancement comes through careful study and gradual improvement, Stormwind explained as he led the human delegation through their primary research facility. They are wrong. Advancement comes through necessity, through pressure, through being forced to become more than you were. The partnership that developed between humans and Cathari proved this point. Within months, joint research teams were producing innovations that neither species could have achieved alone. Human adaptability combined with Cathari theoretical knowledge created breakthrough after breakthrough. They weren't the only refugees. The Terrans soon discovered a network of species that had rejected Council membership or been exiled for violating technological restrictions. Each had developed along different paths, exploring possibilities that the Council had deemed too dangerous or too destabilizing. The Nexari had turned their entire species into living computers, using biotechnology to enhance mental capabilities beyond anything the telepathic Qualith could achieve. The Forgeborn had replaced most of their organic components with machinery that could be continuously upgraded and modified. The Wanderers had abandoned planets entirely, living in massive generation ships that could cross the galaxy without relying on anyone else for resources or protection. All of them had stories of Council restrictions, of being told their natural development was too dangerous, too unpredictable, too threatening to galactic stability. "They fear change," explained Nexari Prime Mind Synthesis during a gathering of refugee leaders. "The Council maintains power through predictability. When a species develops beyond their models, they either control it or eliminate it." Admiral Price looked around the room at representatives of 7 different species, all united by their rejection of council authority. How many others are out there? Hundreds, Stormwind replied. Scattered across the dark regions, hidden in nebulae. Living in dimensions the council pretends don't exist. All of us surviving, growing, becoming what we were meant to be without anyone's permission. The revelation reshaped humanity's entire mission. They weren't just establishing colonies. They were joining a hidden civilization that spanned the galaxy, a network of free species that had chosen development over safety. But freedom came with prices the Council had never mentioned. The first major test came when a machine collective scouting force discovered one of the human research stations. Unlike the restrained conflicts within Council space, the machines attacked immediately and without mercy. They had no interest in negotiations or territorial agreements. They wanted to absorb human technology and add human biological patterns to their collective knowledge. The battle lasted 14 hours. When it ended, the human station was gone. But so was the entire machine collective force. The humans had fought with weapons that violated every Council treaty, using technology that the Council had declared too dangerous for younger species. Now you understand, Stormwind said afterwards, reviewing battle recordings. This is why the Council maintains its restrictions. Out here, there are no rules of engagement. No neutral mediation. No protection except what you can provide for yourself. But humans adapted quickly. Military doctrine developed at a pace that amazed their allies. Human commanders showed an intuitive understanding of three-dimensional combat that seemed to baffle more mathematically oriented species. Captain Torres found himself promoted to admiral within a year, commanding a battle group that had never lost an engagement. His tactics manual became required reading throughout the refugee network. Humans don't fight like other species, he explained to a gathering of allied military leaders. We don't calculate optimal solutions. We imagine victory and then figure out how to make it happen. The statement became prophecy when the Void Hunters arrived in force. The refugees had always known this day would come. The Void Hunters were attracted to technological advancement, drawn to civilizations that pushed beyond established boundaries. They had consumed dozens of species that the Council had exiled or abandoned, but they had never faced humans. The battle for the Nexari home system lasted 3 weeks. By the end, human ships were using weapons that existed more in theory than practice, powered by technologies that required faith as much as science. They fought with the same desperate creativity that had carried their species from caves to stars in just 10,000 years. When the last Void Hunter ship was destroyed, its pieces scattered across 7 star systems. The other refugee species looked at humanity with a new understanding. You are not like us, Nexari Prime Mind Synthesis observed. We fled the Council to preserve our nature. You fled to discover yours. Admiral Price stood in the wreckage of what had been the sector's most dangerous threat, surrounded by ships and weapons that hadn't existed when humanity left Council space. Around her, the refugee network stretched across dozens of star systems, united under human leadership for the first time in any of their histories. Maybe it's time, she said, to remind the galaxy what choice really looks like. Behind her, hidden shipyards worked around the clock, building vessels designed by human imagination and powered by technologies the Council had never dreamed could be combined. The refugee network had found its champions, and the champions were ready to come home. High Chancellor Vex High stood before the massive tactical display in the Council's war room, watching with growing unease as his military advisors updated threat assessments that had been routine for 3,000 years. Red markers indicated machine collective incursions. Yellow showed Void Hunter activity. But it was the blue markers that troubled him most. Unknown contacts appearing throughout the Outer Rim with alarming frequency. The hegemony's border fleets have gone silent, reported Admiral Korthek, the Altarian military commander, whose species had dominated galactic warfare for centuries. 17 battle groups, gone in the space of a week. No distress calls, no debris fields. They simply vanished. The Qualith military advisor projected his thoughts directly into the minds of everyone present, his usual telepathic composure cracking slightly. The neural patterns are wrong. Every engagement shows the same impossibility. tactical thinking that operates outside established parameters. It's as if the attackers don't follow normal strategic logic. Chancellor Vex High's 4 eyes focused on a particular cluster of disappearances. "Show me the Kepler sector incidents." The display shifted, revealing a star map that made his ancient blood run cold. The attacks formed a pattern, moving systematically through space with precision that spoke of detailed intelligence and careful planning. But more troubling was their direction. They were heading toward Council space. "The pattern suggests a mobile force of considerable size," Admiral Korthek continued, "but our sensors show no fleet movements large enough to accomplish these victories. It's as if entire battle groups are being destroyed by ghosts." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. For 3 millennia, the Council had maintained order through superior technology and overwhelming force projection. The idea that some unknown enemy could systematically eliminate major military formations without being detected challenged everything they understood about galactic warfare. The silence was broken by an alert that every being in the chamber had hoped never to hear. Incoming mass contact. Heading directly for the Council's home system. "How many ships?" Chancellor Vex High demanded. The sensor operator, a Zephyrian whose scales had gone pale with shock, struggled to speak. "Initial count. 973 vessels, Chancellor, all unknown configurations. They're not using any drive signatures in our databases." The number hit the room like a physical blow. The largest fleet action in Council history had involved barely 200 ships. No single species possessed the industrial capacity to build nearly 1,000 vessels without the Council knowing about it. "Defensive positions," Admiral Korthek ordered. "Bring the home fleet to full readiness. Contact all member species military commanders." But even as the orders went out, everyone in the chamber knew the mathematics were wrong. The Council's home defense force numbered fewer than 400 ships, and many of those were ceremonial vessels or aging patrol craft. They had never needed more. No one had ever been foolish enough to directly challenge the Council in their own system. "Sir," the sensor operator continued, his voice barely steady, "they're broadcasting on all standard diplomatic frequencies. They're requesting permission to enter Council space for negotiations." The irony was not lost on anyone present. 3 years ago, they had watched a small human delegation walk out of these very chambers. Now, someone was asking politely for permission to bring nearly 1,000 warships into Council space for talks. "Who are they?" Chancellor Vex High asked, though part of him already suspected the answer. The response, when it came, was delivered in perfect galactic standard, with an accent that every being in the chamber recognized despite not having heard it for 3 years. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation, commanding the First Liberation Fleet. We request an audience with the Galactic Council to discuss terms for the peaceful restructuring of galactic governance. We will arrive at the Council station in 6 hours with full diplomatic honors." The same voice, the same human who had walked out of the Council chambers with such quiet confidence. But now she commanded nearly 1,000 ships, and spoke of restructuring galactic governance as if it were a minor administrative matter. Chancellor Vex High felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature. "Show me these ships." The main display shifted to show the approaching fleet. And what they saw defied everything they thought they knew about military technology. The vessels moved in perfect formation despite being completely different from one another. Some were clearly human in design, but others showed architectural influences from species that didn't exist in Council databases. More troubling were the energy readings. Each ship showed power signatures that exceeded Council capital vessels by orders of magnitude. The weapons systems visible on their hulls used principles that Council scientists had declared theoretically impossible. "Those aren't human ships," Admiral Korthek said slowly. "At least, not entirely. The design philosophies are completely alien." The Qualith advisor's mental projection carried pure bewilderment. The neural patterns broadcasting from those vessels. There are at least 7 different species thought patterns, all coordinating perfectly, all thinking in harmony despite being completely different forms of consciousness. 7 species, Chancellor Vex High repeated. Working together. Under human command. The implications cascaded through his mind like falling dominoes. For 3 years, while the Council had assumed humanity was struggling to survive in the unknown regions, they had been building alliances. Not just with other refugee species, but with civilizations that possess technology beyond Council understanding. "There's more," the sensor operator reported. "Long-range sensors are detecting similar fleets throughout the galaxy. The Altarian Mining Consortium's primary facilities are surrounded by unknown vessels. The hegemony's capital system is under what appears to be peaceful occupation. Every major military installation outside Council space is gone." The $17 the scope of the operation became clear. This wasn't a desperate attack by exiled humans. This was a coordinated campaign that had systematically neutralized every major military force in the galaxy before making its move on the Council itself. "How?" Admiral Korthek whispered. "How did we not detect any of this?" The answer came 6 hours later, when Admiral Sarah Chen walked back into the Council chambers for the first time in 3 years. She looked exactly as she had when she left, calm, confident, and completely unintimidated by the assembled representatives of 47 different species. But now, she wore a uniform that combined human design with elements from species that the Council had declared extinct centuries ago. Behind her walked 7 other beings, each representing species that the Council records claimed had vanished into the unknown regions and disappeared. The Kethari Stormwind, whose people had been exiled for technological violations. A Nexari collective mind, whose species had been declared too dangerous for membership. A Forge-born delegation, whose mechanical nature had been deemed unsuitable for civilized society. All of them very much alive, very much advanced, and very much united under human leadership. "Honorable Chancellor," Sarah said, her voice carrying the same respectful tone she had used 3 years earlier. "The Terran Federation and our allies have returned to resume diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council." "With 900 ships," Chancellor Vexhai responded, his voice strained. 973, Sarah corrected pleasantly. "Plus support fleets positioning throughout the galaxy. We wanted to ensure that our diplomatic discussions wouldn't be interrupted by any misunderstandings." The Zephyrian ambassador, his scales now showing patterns of extreme agitation, spoke first. "This is an act of war. No species brings military fleets into Council space without permission." Sarah's expression remained perfectly calm. "We requested permission 6 hours ago. You granted it. We're here for negotiations, just as we announced." "What negotiations?" Chancellor Vexhai demanded. Sarah smiled, but this time there was warmth in it alongside the confidence. "The same thing we wanted 3 years ago, Chancellor. The right to make our own choices, to develop according to our own nature, to explore possibilities without asking anyone's permission. And now you have it," the Chancellor replied. "You left Council space. You established your independence. Why return with military force?" "Because," Sarah said, "we discovered something important during our time away. We weren't the only ones who wanted freedom. There are dozens of species out there who left Council space rather than accept limitations on their development. Hundreds more who were exiled for refusing to conform to Council standards." She gestured to her diverse delegation. "We found each other. We learned from each other. We grew together in ways that the Council's regulations would never have allowed." The Qualith advisor projected sharp confusion. "Why reveal this? You could have remained hidden indefinitely," Stormwind answered, his translated voice carrying 3 centuries of accumulated wisdom. "Because hiding is not growth. Because freedom shared is freedom strengthened. Because the galaxy is large enough for many different ways of living," Sarah nodded. "The Liberation Fleet isn't here to conquer the Council. We're here to expand it." The statement sent ripples of confusion through the chamber. Expansion had always been the Council's role, bringing new species into their protective embrace, sharing the benefits of civilized cooperation. Every species that the Council has exiled, every civilization that has fled rather than accept limitations, every group that has been declared too dangerous or too different. "We found them," Sarah continued. "They're not enemies of galactic peace. They're not threats to stability. They're just different approaches to the same goal. Advancement, growth, survival. Admiral Corthex's mandibles clicked aggressively. Different approaches that led to military capabilities beyond Council comprehension. Technologies that violate established principles. Power that threatens the balance we've maintained for millennia. Yes, Sarah agreed simply. Exactly that. The honesty was more disturbing than any threat could have been. Chancellor Vexhai studied the human woman who had walked out of his chambers with quiet dignity and returned with nearly 1,000 ships. What are you proposing? A new kind of council, Sarah replied. One that doesn't limit growth but channels it. One that doesn't prevent advancement but shares it. One that protects species not by controlling them but by ensuring they have the freedom to become whatever they're capable of becoming. She activated a holographic display that filled the chamber with star maps, showing the true extent of the galaxy's inhabited regions. Vast areas that the Council had declared empty or dangerous glowed with the lights of thriving civilizations. This is what 3 years of freedom accomplished, she said. This is what species can build when they're not told what they can't do. The question is, do you want to be part of it, or do you want to keep pretending that the galaxy is small enough for one group to control? The chamber erupted in discussion, argument, and the sound of 47 different species trying to process a reality that had shifted beneath their feet. The Council had been the supreme authority for 3,000 years. The idea of sharing that authority, of acknowledging that other approaches to civilization might be equally valid, challenged everything they believed. But outside the station, 973 ships waited patiently, each one representing possibilities the Council had never imagined. And throughout the galaxy, liberated species built and grew and explored without asking anyone's permission. The age of asking was over. The age of becoming had begun, and humanity had brought it home to share.